My name is Jens Gayko from VDE, and DKE is a German electrotechnical standardization organization. And I have the pleasure to explain a little bit on the standardization process. So standardization was mentioned several times. I organized my slides along the timeline. So as we heard, the EU Commission finished the trilogue negotiations, and the adoption of publication will be expected by mid of the year and somewhere after 2026. Today we learned very likely 2027 will be the year of the introduction of the DPP in Europe. So that's the regulatory timeline, and here we are at the end of the first quarter of this year. And then, of course, our famous CIRPASS project was launched almost 1.5 years ago, and several other measures started in the same time. The EU Commission, this slide was already shown by Michele, announced very early that standardization will play a role, and in particular standardization for the so-called DPP system, whereas the DPP data will be defined by the EU Commission via so-called delegated acts. So the left side here, the DPP system, will be the task of the standardization to take care of this. And also when we set up the proposal for CIRPASS project, we had this information, and therefore we planned a work package number 4 with standardization in the focus. And here we are also in to make sure that the information is flowing from one activity to the other one. In parallel, the European Standardization Organization CEN and CENELEC said, oh, there will be very likely a standardization request, and typically this comes with a draft standardization request. And in order to review this draft standardization request, they set up a standardization request ad hoc group, SRAHG. Later on, I will ask you about all the acronyms, don't worry. So they set up this standardization request ad hoc group, and this group did in the last almost 1 year the review of the draft standardization request, gave some feedback to the Commission, and there was intense dialogue. And as you see from the image, it's not completely finished, but it's, let's say, almost finished. Yeah, like this a little bit. So maybe very soon we can say it's finished, but not yet today. But already in parallel, since it's very likely that the standardization request will come and will be accepted by the CEN and CENELEC, CEN and CENELEC decided to set up a new technical committee and a so-called joint technical committee, JTC, and it has a number 24, DPP. And this joint technical committee was set up. A kickoff was already just before Christmas. And in 2 weeks, there will be a second meeting of this group. So very soon, this is activated. So this is a slide here from this CEN-CENELEC JTC 24. Here you can see that the chair of this group is Mr. Thomas Knote from Fraunhofer Institute, so from academia, very neutral and very experienced researcher in this area. We have the secretariat from CEN and CENELEC is Ms. Carolina Müller, and the so-called TC secretariat is from Ms. Katharina Sehnert from DIN. And some of the following slides are provided by Thomas Knote. And unfortunately, he is not available today, otherwise he would have given this presentation. So as I said, the next step very, very likely will be the accepted standardization request. And here you can see a link to a web page where the standardization request is available as soon as it is adopted. So it's that will be very likely the next step. Fortunately, or as you also can see, the work of the standardization request, or the formatting is a little bit lost, should be finalized by end of 2025, which is quite soon. But fortunately, we are not starting from scratch. We have already several activities in several existing technical committees on technical aspects which could be used for DPP, let's say it like this. So there are different variants, and some of these concepts are already in widely used by different industries. So there is fortunately no need to start from scratch. So it will be the role of this JTC 24 to deeply review the standardization request, to see what is existing, what can be used, and then please use what is already existing, don't reinvent the wheel. And if there are gaps, then it's the task of this JTC24 to fill the gaps, whether they do their start a standards development within JTC24 or they ask another TC, please start a standardization activity to fill the gap. But as I said, fortunately, no need to start from scratch. So then, coming to standardization, there are also people. Yes, there's real people and basically normal people working in standardization. They have a few specialities. So one of them is they like definitions, and another one is they like to define the scope, and not just the scope, but also to define what is out of scope. When you start, this sounds a little bit weird, but once you are used to it, it's very helpful to define what is in the scope and what is out of the scope, because this helps to solve a lot of misunderstandings. So as we can see here, the passport data is out of scope. Why? Because as the EU Commission said, data is defined by the EU Commission. What is in the scope is right side the DPP system. So this is already adopted in the scope of JTC24. Already this picture was shown in a slight different way, but a similar picture. Also what is out of scope is the supply chain. So from the mine, let's say, to the components, because this is also out of scope of the DPP. DPP starts when the product is placed into the market. And this is also the scope of JTC24 to take care of the DPP system from the point in time when the product is placed into the market. So the scope and the out of scope of the JTC24 fits very well to the ESPR and the upcoming standardization request. Also, we should say the combination is that typically the regulation in Europe defines the so-called essential requirements, whereas the standards define how these essential requirements can be implemented. This is also a typical misunderstanding. It's not a must. It is a voluntary possibility to fulfill the essential requirements of the regulation. Typically, companies follow this because it's much easier and precisely described, but it's also possible to directly follow the requirements from the regulation. But this is typically more effort. So here is also a slide prepared by Thomas Knote giving an architectural overview and also show who should be interested. And basically, it is also very important in standardization to have all stakeholders in the standardization group, so not just the solution providers, but also the companies placing products into market, a consumer organization, maybe national authorities or representatives from the authorities to take care that, for example, market surveillance requirements are considered, and so on and so on. So if there's an interest to join this, you can contact me or contact your national standardization organization to get a delegation to this group. And with that, I conclude my presentation and thank you very much.